الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين ونصلي ونسلم على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. نعم اقرأ.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد النبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولمشايخنا ولجميع المسلمين والحاضرين. أما بعد، فبأسانيدكم شيخنا حفظكم الله تعالى إلى الإمام البخاري رحمه الله تعالى قال: باب ما يعمل الرجل في بيته.
Now, just before we continue, there was a question regarding faut. What constitutes as a faut, and is it a faut if we miss a word or a few words? So regarding faut, we say that the tradition in riwayah is that the student hears each and every single word from either from the teacher directly, or he reads it and the teacher hears it. This is the actual tradition in riwayah, and this is the sunnah. So even if one word is missed, or a portion of a hadith is missed, or one hadith is missed, that will count as faut. And the whole purpose of riwayah, once upon a time, when it was only for the sake of authentication, was this, to make sure that every single word. That's why initially, if you look in the books of Mustalah, when they speak about the method of preservation of the sunnah, they mention that the way it was preserved and passed down is that the student would have to compare each of the words with the asl of his shaykh, and the asl of his shaykh would have been compared with his shaykh, and so on and so forth. So when they actually receive the narrations, they don't only receive them in terms of a general book or a text, but rather it's literally fixing, the same way, for example, in our nusakh, those of you that have physical copies, you fix the mistakes within it. What they would do is that they would have a copy and they would literally try and fix every single mistake. So it's like more like an editing process as opposed to just a recital or a reading process. They would edit their nuskha along with the recitation and not just read it. And some of them would even write the nuskha. And for example, the teacher is teaching, they would write the hadith down while the teacher is teaching. This is difficult. You need individuals that are able to write fast. They are the ones that would write. Otherwise, the majority of it was they would already bring the nuskha, or they would have someone else to copy the nuskha for them, and they would simply edit and remove the mistakes. So the same way an editor goes through a book or a piece of work, making sure that every single word is correct and the commas and periods are all in the places that they're meant to be, and so on and so forth. That is the way they would go through the books of hadith. That was the tradition that was present at that time. This is early on, so we're talking about the second, third century. But afterwards, after the sunnah became compiled on a mass scale, then there was no need for this scrutiny and this level of, for example, precision anymore. Why? Because the sunnah became widely spread and it became mass compiled. And so they continued the tradition of riwayah for the purpose of barakah, in order to keep the chains intact. Otherwise it wasn't needed for the purpose of authentication anymore. However, when we study now riwayatan, and when you receive a riwayah from your teacher or from your mashayikh, then you want to impersonate the earliest tradition to keep this tradition alive. And so in that regard, you want to listen to every single part, and if there's anything which is missed, if there's any part which is missed, then you write it down on the side that this aspect or this part I wasn't able to attend, I didn't hear it, even if it's one hadith or two hadith or three hadith. The other thing is, I might mention this as well, if you actually hear the narration, the teacher doesn't have to permit you to narrate. It's automatically attained, meaning that ijazah is automatically attained if you hear the narration while it's being recited upon the teacher. I don't have to permit you to narrate. You can narrate from me. What do I need to permit? Is when I say, for example, this entire book. That's why we say the ones that hear the entire book, they don't actually need permission, but we give them permission so that you have the asanid available to you. The ones that don't hear the entire book, they would need permission in the part of the book that they don't hear. So if you miss a portion of the book, then you're not going to get ijazah in the whole book. The reason is because you actually don't have ijazah in the whole book. You haven't heard the whole book. And so the teacher can override that and still give permission in the portion which was missed, but he doesn't have to. And so this is when we said that you have to make sure that there's no fault. And as the muhaddithun, they say al-fawtu maut, and fault is like death. This is what they mean. Because if you miss a narration from the teacher, it doesn't matter if the teacher permits for you to narrate. That hadith you haven't heard from a shaykh. And this is the point. So when you transmit the book, you can't say, I heard the entire book upon my teacher. Like when I transmit this book, for example, and I say, I read this entire book upon my shaykh, I literally read the entire book upon my shaykh. I can say that because I heard it from my teacher. But if you miss a few narrations, you no longer can say that. واضح? So in the majalis of riwayah, the rank of that, even if you receive ijazah, the rank of it decreases. It actually lowers. It's not the same as hearing the entire book upon a teacher. So that's why we say develop a habit not to miss anything, because when you don't miss anything, then inshallah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala you'll be able to pass it forward completely. Now go on.
وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن رجاء وحفص بن عمر قال حدثنا شعبة عن الحكم عن إبراهيم عن الأسود قال سألت عائشة رضي الله عنها ما كان يصنع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في أهله فقالت كان
Just one moment. Is it the same if you zone out during riwayah? Naam, it's the same. If you zone out, that means you didn't hear those ahadith. So it is the same. That's why one of our teachers, at the end of each majlis, this is Shaykh Ibrahim al-Saif, the teacher of Shaykh Hamid, at the end of each majlis, he used to give ijazah regarding everything which was read in that majlis. Why? Because he would say sometimes there's small things that happen and people forget and so on and so forth and they zone out or so on and so forth. فَالْإِجَازَةَ تَجْبُرُ الْإِجَازَةَ تَجْبُرُ يعني if I give ijazah for that entire majlis, يعني هذا تجبر. Okay. And this is the same idea as the one who heard the entire book, but maybe, for example, while you're writing something might slip your mind. This is the purpose of ijazah. In the end of the majlis, for example, the teacher signs the ijazah and says, I give these students ijazah because they heard the entire book. Those students, they heard the entire book, but yes, sometimes you're thinking about one part of the hadith and you'll miss a portion of the narration, like because your mind is on one part of the hadith. But this is not a big deal. Like you didn't actually go out of your way to miss it. You were at present, small thing happened and your mind slipped. So we say regarding that, al-ijazah tajbur, meaning the ijazah will be given in the end and it will overlook these small mishappenings or mistakes. Sometimes, for example, let's say you're listening online and the small little cut that happens because of the internet or whatever, and you miss a word or two. This is something which is, but you're listening attentively. This is something which can be overlooked by the ijazah. Naam, go on.
قال سألت عائشة رضي الله عنها ما كان يصنع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في أهله فقالت كان يكون في مهنة أهله فإذا حضرت الصلاة خرج وبه قال حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا
You also have, all of you have mihna in Darul Kathir? You have mihna? With the kasra on the meme? And the makhtuta? No, because I have over here mahna, maybe bil wajhain. Yani. Go on.
وبه قال حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا مهدي بن ميمون عن هشام بن عروة عن أبيه قال سألت عائشة رضي الله عنها ما كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعمل في بيته قالت يقصف نعله ويعمل ما يعمل الرجل في بيته وبه قال حدثنا إسحاق قال أخبرنا عبد الله بن الوليد عن سفيان عن هشام عن أبيه قال سألت عائشة رضي الله عنها ما كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصنع في بيته قالت ما يصنع أحدكم في بيته يقصف النعل ويرقع الثوب ويخيط وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله قال حدثني معاوية بن صالح عن يحيى بن سعيد عن عمرة قيل لعائشة رضي الله عنها ماذا كان رسول الله
عن عمرة قالت قيل لعائشة
قالت قيل لعائشة رضي الله عنها ماذا كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعمل في بيته قالت كان بشرا من البشر يفلي ثوبه ويحلب شاته باب إذا أحب الرجل أخاه فليعلم وبه قال حدثنا مسدد قال حدثنا يحيى بن سعيد عن ثور قال حدثني حبيب بن عبيد عن المقدام بن معدي كلب رضي الله عنه وكان قد أدركه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أحب أحدكم أخاه فليعلمه أنه أحبه وبه قال حدثنا يحيى بن بشر قال حدثنا قبيصة قال حدثنا سفيان عن رباح عن بعبيد الله عن مجاهد قال لقيني رجل من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأخذ بمنكبي من ورائي قال أما إني أحبك قال أحبك الذي أحببتني له فقال لولا أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا أحب الرجل فليخبره أنه أحبه ما أخبرتك قال ثم أخذ يعرض علي الخطبة قال أما إن عندنا جارية أما إنها عوراء وبه قال حدثنا موسى قال حدثنا مبارك قال حدثنا ثابت أن أنس رضي الله عنه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما تحاب الرجلان إلا كان أفضلهما أشد
ما تحاب الرجلان. نعم.
ما تحاب الرجلان إلا كان أفضلهما أشدهما حبا لصاحبه.
نعم. ما تحاب الرجلان. نعم يا عبد الله. Over here you've learned that the fa'il, if it's ism zahir, then the fi'il comes as mufrad. You say جاء القوم or جاء الرجل جاء الرجال. Correct? Whether the fa'il is singular, dual or plural, what do you say? جاء. You don't say جاء الرجال, correct? جاء الرجال is incorrect. صحيح? طيب. So over here ما تحاب الرجلان, is the fa'il ism zahir or is it hidden? Is it a ضمير? Where's the fa'il? الرجلان is the fa'il, so it's ism zahir, correct? Like, why does the fi'l have an alif then? Maybe a publication typo. That's possible. What do you guys have? Same thing? Same thing? مخطوطة?
I don't have alif.
You don't have an alif? Okay, subhanallah. With it. So either we have two options over here. Either it's when your publication error, or we say this is what they call لغة أكلون البراغيث. Some of the Arabs, they used to, even if the fa'il was ism zahir, they used to bring the dhamir for it as well. Okay, and then is this permissible or not? The Kufiyun will probably allow it, the Basriyun will probably say no, and then they would just do ta'wil and they would interpret the scenarios where it occurred. But this is very prevalent in ahadith. It's not uncommon in ahadith for this lugha, which is lughat akalun al-baraghith, to occur. This is very, very common in narrations. واضح. نعم, go on.
باب إذا أحب رجلا فلا يماريه ولا يسأل عنه. وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثني معاوية أن أبا الزاهرية حدثه عن جبير بن نفير عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه أنه قال إذا أحببت أخا فلا تماريه ولا تشاره ولا تسأل عنه فعسى أن توفي له عدوا فيخبرك
توفي. You have توفي. نعم, توافي. نعم.
فعسى أن توافي له عدوا فيخبرك بما ليس فيه فيفرق بينك وبينه.
نعم. Look at this beautiful narration. The advice of Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He says, إذا أحببت أخا, if you love a brother, فلا تماره. Number one, don't argue with him. Why? Because when you argue with him, what's going to happen? نعم. What's going to happen when you argue? Eventually you're going to get into, the argument's going to get serious. And when the argument gets serious, then you're no longer going to like that individual. You're going to distance yourself from that individual. Number one, don't argue with him too much. Leave the argument. Sometimes you have to understand that a relationship is worth more than one argument or two arguments. This is really, really important. When, let's say for example, you have someone who's close to you and for example, you get into an argument with that individual, you keep in mind all of the good times you had with that person, or all of the benefits that you achieved from that individual, all of the how that person did ihsan upon you. When you remember these things, then you think طيب له سوابق, yani he's already proven himself. That person has already proven himself. So you learn how to overlook and then allow yourself to have husn al-dhan, which is to think the best of the side of that individual. Number one, وَلَا تُمَارِهِ. Number two, وَلَا تُشَارِهِ, which is don't treat that individual badly. This is also a marad. Yani some people, in some cultures, they love someone, they reflect their love by being harsh upon the person. This is a marad. Yani if you have love for an individual, that doesn't mean you be harsh upon him. Be more harsh upon the one that you love. That's your method of showing your affection and care. ليس مناسبا. If you have care for an individual, then لا تشاره. But then he says, this is the most beautiful. وَلَا تَسْأَلْ عَنْهُ. Don't ask regarding the person other people. And don't go around asking regarding the person you're looking for some mistake of his. Why? Because when you do that, he says, maybe you meet one of his enemies. Maybe you come across someone who's not too close to that person, who actually has animosity towards that person for whatever reason. And he tells you, and anytime someone has animosity, they exaggerate. So he tells you something regarding that person which is not actually in him. It's not actually in that individual. But then you start thinking this person is like so and so. Or sometimes everyone is a human being. Every single person is a human being. Let's say someone, for the most of the time, for the majority of time, they control their anger, they're very level-headed, they're down to earth, and so on and so forth. It's possible in one scenario, one time, maybe something happened, and maybe they were going through something, so they expressed their anger in a way they shouldn't have. It happens. Humans are humans, they can. No one's perfect. They make mistakes. So let's say someone, all he knows about this person is that moment. He hasn't seen anything else. All he's seen was that moment. What's the image he's going to develop regarding him? First impressions are last impressions. So he's going to develop this image that this person is like this. This is the way he always is. Even though in reality it's not like that. It's the opposite. So he develops this negative image of this person, and then he goes and spreads this negative image of that individual. So sometimes it's not even animosity. It's simply a lack of knowledge regarding the person himself. A lack of knowledge regarding everything that individual has done and how good of an individual he is. But the limited knowledge, and then they spread negative information regarding that person. He says, maybe you meet one of his enemies and they tell you something which is not actually in him, and because of that you end up separating, or you end up getting distant from that individual. Now I'm going.
وبه قال حدثنا المقرئ قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن.
Sometimes the relationship matters more than one moment of, for example, who's right and who's wrong, or one small little thing. Only a fool would be a person who has good relationships, and he takes those good relationships, and because of one small moment or something, he's willing to throw them out the window. This is something foolish. Now, go on.
وبه قال حدثنا المقرئ قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن عبد الله بن يزيد بن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: من أحب أخا لله في الله قال إني أحبك لله فدخل جميعا الجنة، كان الذي أحب في الله أرفع درجة لحبه على الذي أحبه له. باب العقل في القلب. وبه قال حدثنا سعيد بن أبي مريم قال أخبرنا محمد بن مسلم قال أخبرني عمرو بن دينار عن ابن شهاب عن عياض بن خليفة عن علي رضي الله عنه أنه سمعه بصفين يقول: إن العقل في القلب والرحمة في الكبد والرأفة في الطحال والنفس في الرئة.
نعم, where is the human intellect? Is it in the heart of the individual, or is it in the mind of the individual? This is, when they say aql over here and they say qalb over here, what are they really referring to? This is a debate that it's not a religious discussion. Number one, the Messenger didn't it wasn't sent sallallahu alaihi wasallam in order to teach the human body and biology and how the human body works and so on and so forth. That wasn't the purpose of sending the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they used to, at that time, feel that, okay, where are these emotions coming from and so on and so forth, and they would give an idea or an explanation. These concepts only become more precise as time goes on. So there's no munafa, you have to take it literally, and neither do we have to take it. Number one, it's a statement of Ali radiallahu anhu, correct? Now, neither do we have to take it as if this is wahi. Yes, if it is wahi, then sam'an wa ta'a. If it's genuinely wahi and the literal meaning is intended, sam'an wa ta'a. But is it genuinely wahi and is the literal meaning intended? That's the point of discussion. Now I'm going.
باب الكبر. وبه قال حدثنا سليمان بن حرب قال حدثنا حماد بن زيد عن الصقعب بن زهير عن زيد بن أسلم قال لا أعلمه إلا عن عطاء بن يسار عن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما قال: كنا جلوسا عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فجاء رجل من أهل البادية عليه جبة سيجان حتى قام على رأس النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: إن صاحبكم قد وضع كل فارس، أو قال يريد أن يضع كل فارس ويرفع كل راع ابن راع. فأخذ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بمجامع جبته فقال: ألا أرى عليك لباس من لا يعقل؟ ثم قال: إن نبي الله نوحا عليه السلام لما حضرته الوفاة قال لابنه: إني قاص عليك الوصية، آمرك باثنتين وأنهاك عن اثنتين، آمرك بلا إله إلا الله، فإن السماوات السبع والأرضين السبع لو وضعن في كفة ووضعت لا إله إلا الله في كفة لرجحت بهن، ولو أن السماوات السبع والأرضين السبع كن حلقة مبهمة لفصمتهن لا إله إلا الله وسبحان الله وبه.
لفصمتهن ولا قصمتهن؟
فصمت.
You have fa? I have qaf. Yeah. Qaf? It should be qaf. I think this might just be a publication error. لقصمتهن. Yeah.
لقصمتهن.
Fasama does not mean to crush, right? Look it up in the dictionary. I think the whole meaning would, if it even is a word. Now I'm going.
لقصمتهن لا إله إلا الله وسبحان الله وبحمده فإنها صلاة كل شيء وبها يرزق كل شيء وأنهاك عن الشرك والكبر. فقلت أو قيل يا رسول الله هذا الشرك قد عرفناه فما الكبر؟ هو أن يكون لأحدنا حلة يلبسها. قال لا. قال فهو أن يكون لأحدنا نعلان حسنتان لهما شراكان حسنان. قال لا. قال فهو أن يكون لأحدنا دابة يركبها. قال لا. قال فهو أن يكون لأحدنا أصحاب يجلسون إليه. قال لا. قال يا رسول الله فما الكبر؟ قال سفه الحق وغمص الناس. وبه قال
مقاييس اللغة says الثاء والصاد والميم أصل صحيح يدل على انصداع شيء من غير بينونة. يدل على انصداع شيء من غير بينونة.
على انصلاع شيء
انصداع
من غير بينونة. An example they give?
من ذلك الخصم. He doesn't give a poem. This is a poem.
After that? That's it?
Yeah. That's very short.
نعم. يلا go on.
وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن مسلمة قال حدثنا عبد العزيز عن زيد بن عبد الله بن عمرو رضي الله عنهما أنه قال يا رسول الله أمن الكبر نحوه. قال نحوه.
ذكر نحو نعم وقال نحوه.
وبه قال
This is a really beautiful hadith, the previous one, which is regarding arrogance and the reality of arrogance. Arrogance is not that a person, for example, simply is dressing well, or he, for example, the effects of the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala witness upon him. This is not the definition of arrogance. What defines arrogance is a feeling in the heart. Okay, the messenger gave two things. Number one, when the truth is presented to that individual, he denies it. He's not willing to accept. This is where the individual's ego has become more important than the truth. The only time the ego becomes more important than the truth is when his ego is too much, which is arrogance. Number two is looking down upon other people. He genuinely thinks lowly of other individuals and thinks of himself as someone superior. These are the two conditions, or these are the two things, if found one of them, that will be considered arrogance, and not necessarily the appearance. Yes, many times a certain appearance goes with this. So don't misunderstand. Don't think that, for example, a certain type of dress code or a certain type of, for example, demeanor and character cannot be a sign of arrogance. It can be a sign of arrogance, but it isn't the exact essence of arrogance. Okay? Now go on.
وبه قال حدثنا مسدد قال حدثنا يونس بن القاسم أبو عمر اليمامي قال حدثنا عكرمة بن خالد قال سمعت ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من تعظم في نفسه أو اختال في مشيته لقي الله عز وجل وهو عليه غضبان. وبه قال حدثنا عبد العزيز بن عبد الله بن عبد العزيز بن محمد.
The moment someone starts thinking that they themselves are able to achieve anything and it's only through their ability and so on and so forth, خاب وخسر. That person is destroyed. Every single thing that we have, and every single thing that we have achieved, every single thing that we see around us is only through the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A human by himself is not able to do anything. Now go on.
عن محمد بن عمرو عن أبي سلمة عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما استكبر من أكل معه خادمه وركب الحمار بالأسواق واعتقل الشاة فحلبها.
نعم, this is a beautiful hadith of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. ما استكبر من أكل معه خادمه. The one with whom his servant eats food, that person has not shown arrogance, or he is not arrogant. Why? Because these actions are actually the opposite of what an arrogant person would do. So for someone to be willing to allow his servant to eat with him, even though his servant is of a low class and he's of a higher class, but allow his servant to actually eat with him on the same plate, for example, this is putting yourself down. And likewise he says وَرَكِبَ الْحِمَارَ بِالْأَسْوَاقِ, and to ride himar, which is a donkey. Even the Messenger had sallallahu alaihi wasallam a donkey which he would ride. So even if someone, for example, has an old car and he's riding the old car, and he's purposely going into places with that old car riding it, al-amru sahl. If he intends, in fact, from the Imam of the Haram, normally whenever they would all pull up in the parking lot, they have a specific area to park. All of them, mashallah, tabarakallah, they have most updated vehicles and most high class cars and whatnot. And then you would see one old car over there parked amongst all of the other cars. So one of the Imams of the Haram, he used to do this just to avoid arrogance. He actually, even though he didn't need to, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them, but he would do this he would purposely drive around in an old car just to avoid this kibr from entering the heart. And I know this from people around him personally, very close to him. This is something he would do. So this is the taming of the discipline. Maybe someone, it doesn't cause that, it's normal for him. He doesn't feel that way when he dresses that way, like that, or he has a car, for example, in a certain car. Maybe for some individual, he doesn't feel that way. But it's the taming of one's own heart and soul. And everyone knows that for themselves the best. No one can tell you, for example, that, you think this way and so on. This is something inside your own mind, and a person has to discipline himself. Now I'm going.
وبه قال حدثنا موسى بن بحر قال حدثنا علي بن هاشم بن البريد قال حدثنا صالح بياع الأكسية عن جدته قالت رأيت علي رضي الله عنه اشترى تمرا بدرهم فحمله في ملحفته فقلت له أو قال له رجل أحمل عنك يا أمير المؤمنين قال لا أبو العيال يحق أن يحمل.
Yes, look at this. There's a question that was asked, how does a person remove arrogance when it's a feeling of the heart? Sometimes it's very difficult to defeat. Look at this. He says, I seen Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and he purchased tamran bidirhamin. He purchased dates for 1 dirham. فَحَمَلَهُ فِي مِلْحَفَتِهِ. And then he carried it himself in his own pouch or in his own, like for example, bag that he had. So someone said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, let me carry it. And let me carry it for you. قَالَ لَا أَبُو الْعِيَالِ أَحَقُّ أَن يَحْمِلَ. And he said, no, I'll carry it myself. Like over here, even though the hadith itself is ضعيف, however, there are certain hadith in the same meaning which are marfu'. Na'am. However, the marfu' one is also very ضعيف. The point over here is that there's two things. Number one is the adab of the people around. And number two is the adab of that individual himself. And both, when they are found, then there is beauty. When one side is lacking, then it destroys the system. The people around, like the students or the khuddam or the disciples and so on and so forth, they should be wanting to assist their teachers. And the teachers should not be wanting assistance from them. When both of these are found, then there is beauty. But when one of them is lacking, either the students are not wanting to assist the teacher and serve the teacher, or the teacher, for example, only wanting that the students do it and he feels like he is too above, for example, carrying his own stuff or working with his own task or whatnot, then the beauty is gone. So both of these must be found.
به قال حدثنا عمر قال حدثنا أبي قال حدثنا الأعمش قال حدثنا أبو إسحاق.
And regarding how do you remove arrogance, one of the best ways to do it is to find righteous individuals that don't have it and be in their company. Be around that and accompany them. This is one of the best ways to, any trait that you want to adopt, look for people who have that trait. If you feel like you're becoming stingy and you're not generous, look for people that are generous and spend some time with them. If you feel like, for example, you get angry very quickly, look for people that are down to earth and cool and easygoing and spend time with them. If you feel like, for example, that you are developing a degree of arrogance in your knowledge or whatever else, look for scholars that are humble. Look for people that are humble. Look for people that are like that and spend time with them. Automatically these traits will be removed from you. Now I'm going.
عن أبي مسلم الأغر حدثه عن أبي سعيد الخدري وأبي هريرة رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال قال الله عز وجل العز إزاري والكبرياء ردائي فمن نازعني بشيء منهما عذبته. وبه قال حدثنا علي بن حجر قال حدثنا إسماعيل قال حدثني أبو رواحة يزيد بن أيهم عن الهيثم بن مالك الطائي قال سمعت النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما يقول على المنبر قال إن للشيطان مصاليا وفخوخا وإن مصالي الشيطان وفخوخه البطر بأنعم الله والفخر بعطاء الله والكبرياء على عباد الله واتباع الهوى في غير ذات الله. وبه قال حدثنا علي قال حدثنا سفيان عن أبي الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال احتجت الجنة والنار. وقال سفيان أيضا اختصمت الجنة والنار قالت النار يلجني الجبارون ويلجني المتكبرون وقالت الجنة يلجني الضعفاء ويلجني الفقراء. قال الله تبارك وتعالى للجنة أنت رحمتي أرحم بك من أشاء ثم قال للنار أنت عذابي أعذب بك من أشاء ولكل واحدة منكما ملؤها. وبه قال حدثنا إسحاق قال حدثنا محمد بن الفضيل قال حدثنا الوليد بن جميع عن أبي سلمة بن عبد الرحمن قال لم يكن أصحاب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم متحزقين ولا متماوتين وكانوا يتناشدون الشعر في مجالسهم ويذكرون أمر جاهليتهم فإذا أريد أحد منهم على شيء من أمر الله دارت حماليق عينيه كأنه مجنون. وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن المثنى قال حدثنا عبد الوهاب قال حدثنا هشام عن محمد عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رجلا أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وكان جميلا فقال حبب إلي الجمال وأعطيت ما ترى حتى ما أحب أن يفوقني أحد منهم إما قال بشراك نعل وإما قال بشسع أحمر الكبر ذاك قال لا ولكن الكبر من بطر
بشسع أحمر الكبر ذاك
وإما قال بشسع أحمر الكبر ذاك قال لا ولكن الكبر من بطر الحق وغمط الناس. وبه قال حدثنا محمد بن سلام قال أخبرنا عبد الله بن مبارك محمد بن عجلان عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يحشر المتكبرون يوم القيامة أمثال الذر في صورة الرجال يغشاهم الذل من كل مكان يساقون إلى سجن من جهنم يسمى بولس دعلوهم نار الأنيار ويسقون من عصارة أهل النار طينة الخبال. باب من انتصر من ظلمه.
We'll stop over here بإذن الله تعالى والحمد لله رب العالمين.